Welcome, everybody, to the Finding Purpose podcast. My name is Adam, and I'm your host. I did want to thank everyone for listening to my previous episodes with Dave Regina. Dave Regina, who is the co-founder of Action Cultivates Excellent ACE Sanctuary, which helps to cultivate a safe place for men to grow, develop, and become stronger in their respective fields. And particularly my last episode with Neil Bakshi, Neil had actually driven up from Princeton, New Jersey for that episode. I encourage everyone to see it. It's a super spiritual journey on how to remain grounded using the powers of meditation and centering yourself. I encourage you to look into any of Neil's. He does these retreats. He's doing a big one in Egypt next year. And I really think you can take a lot out of Neil's message. Today, I'm lucky to have Demetra Ganias here with me. She is the editor for the Local Moms Network. She also hosts their podcast, Momcast with Demetra. And, you know, I was connected with her actually through the production company that we both do the podcast, and we chatted. I reached out to her on Instagram because something that had drawn me to her was the fact that she was a public speaking coach. And then I would later find out that she had a career in broadcast news. And, you know, I just picked her brain a little bit because that's an avenue that I'm looking to explore in the public speaking space. And she gave me some good pointers. We really hit it off. And given that she is here in the community, it was just a natural thing for me to ask her to join me on an episode. So, Demetra, welcome.
I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you.
The universe put us together. We weren't actually supposed to be here because I thought you were contacting me simply because we both have a connection to Pod Populi. But somehow Instagram and the algorithm wanted you and me to meet.
Well, you know, it's funny because maybe that was originally why. Maybe I saw them post something and then, you know, I was in that rabbit hole of Instagram and it led me to your page. And, you know, I saw that you were a public speaking coach, and that's something that really interests me. And I think I also wanted to see if you knew my friend Brandon, who's also in the public speaking space locally. And, you know, frankly, I thought I may have even met you in the past, but regardless, I'm glad I did. I love that you, you know, have launched your podcast, and were you able to speak about motherhood and bringing in the community of local moms here in Greenwich and using your skills to have those conversations, because I think they're so important. But, you know, one thing that you just said before we even hopped on is that you were raised up in Worcester, Mass. And you don't have a Worcester accent. Worcester.
Thank
That's
God.
how they say it.
Worcester.
Yeah.
It was such a joy to grow up there. I feel like that's where I got my grit.
Yes.
I mean, there was a little bit of everything there. So my parents are Greek immigrants. So they came when they were younger. My mom when she was about 5, my dad when he was 14. And I'm not kidding, from my dad's village in Greece. I mean, there were thousands of people from this one village in Greece who settled in Worcester. And we were like this enclave. It was just Greek strong there. And that was my growing up. I mean, I grew up at church, right? Went to church Sundays, went to Sunday school, did my dance group there, went to Greek school. I mean, we didn't do a million different activities. There was no social media, internet. So that was our social life. That was my grounding. That was my foundation for everything that I've ever done.
I love the Greek culture, and I have had exposure to it because I have a friend who is Greek Orthodox, and he lives in Chicago. And I actually had him on the podcast a while back, and he was talking about how they have a really tight-knit community there. Same thing, you know, where you guys have just like are very loyal to each other. And I think that the Greek culture is beautiful. And then there's a Greek Orthodox church in Danbury. And yes. I used to go to their Greek festival every year. It was like my favorite thing in the world.
The festivals are amazing. It's such a great way for Greeks to show our hospitality. Mm-hmm. You know, there's philanthropy, there's philotimo, which is love of honor. And then there is this just real grace that we show to everybody who comes into our homes. And the church is our home. And I actually met so many people that I consider a part of my family right now in every church community that I've bounced around to, whether in upstate New York or in Manhattan or everywhere I've ever lived. Where do you meet people? I go to church. and we chill at coffee hour, and I was always the last person to leave. And when was I working, right? Nights, weekends, holidays. So I was in this news business that was relentless. And I was always working, and I missed all of these important things all the time. But I would say, don't worry about it. Mom, I'm good. I'm going to go, I'm going to have Thanksgiving dinner with my friends from church after I go work my day shift. Or I'm going to, be there all night, anchoring the 6 and 11, but I'm going to go have apps before Christmas at this family's house because they took me in. So it's such a medley of all the things that were important to me. It was, being so attuned to a work ethic that my parents had given me and that I saw. So I just worked all the time, and I never thought it was weird, even though I was a little bit sad. And it was just finding family and people who have the same core values as you do. And then it was just this love of being together, and people took me in all the time. I'll never forget it.
I love that. And, do you have a big family?
I do. I'm the middle child of 3. I have an older sister and a younger brother.
Okay.
And it's my big fat Greek wedding, basically. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of it. I think there's just such a meddling in the most loving way that goes on in a Greek family. And we just really want to take care of each other. So I love this idea that my problems are their problems and their problems are mine, which is a little awful sometimes. And it's a lot of weight on you. And you just do feel this kind of incessant, control or people in your business. But in the end, it's all love. They want to make sure you're okay.
That's funny. That's how my mom's side is. My mom's side, they're Persian, and Persians are very similar in where you mess with one, you mess with all. Yeah. And it's also when one of us is ailing, everyone rallies, and sometimes it's a little overwhelming because it seems like prying, but it's not. It's all love, and they just want to be able to offer themselves to the person who needs it. But we're nosy people, and we like to gossip, and
hell yeah,
we love to chat, and we're very loud, and that's how we roll.
And if something's wrong with you, just eat something. You'll be fine.
Exactly. Yes, and we eat. We eat so much, like our holidays, even like Thanksgiving. But you have like the Persian rice with the raisins,
delicious.
Yeah, it's like honestly, like I don't know how to pronounce them. I don't want to like do it poor justice by pronouncing them, and then they make this red stew, and it's like this traditional Thanksgiving, and then a bunch of Persian food.
Of course, there is no Thanksgiving without spanakopita at a Greek house.
Yeah, what's that?
Spinach pie.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Is that like a quiche?
It is kind of like a quiche. It's phyllo dough, and inside there are, spinach and scallions and dill and parsley. Oh my gosh, you've never had spinach pie?
No.
Okay, well, I'm bringing you some.
Love it. It's so funny because, my friend who's Greek, he said that when he was marrying his now wife, in the beginning, it was very hard because she had like 3 older brothers, and they were very protective of her. Sure. And they were very, very skeptical of him. And, he had to not only earn her love, but their respect. And, I don't think that's too dissimilar. Like the way he described it, like it was on a very different level. So like, I really respect that about the Greek culture, where it's like, listen, like you want to come into this family, you're going to have to, prove your stripes. And he did, and they're happily married, and now they have his back. And I think that's like such a beautiful thing. When you were growing up in Worcester, you also just alluded to like how like it was called a melting pot. I want to jump into that a little bit because that's fascinating.
Well, I think that we had an eye into what was going on in our city just because my parents were public school teachers and they taught English as a second language. And it seemed like everywhere there was strife in the world, young kids from those communities would end up in their classrooms. So it was always just a place of a lot of, acceptance and camaraderie and just coming into the fold. And my parents as immigrants were, they really saw themselves in those students and thought, I used to be you. So come on, let's get you settled. Let's make you feel like you have a community. So there was, beyond the Greek community, it was always just, different types of people who were in my backyard and just all around me.
Yeah. I mean, you said your parents were ESL teachers. Are they multilingual? Are you multilingual?
Yeah, I speak Greek, of course.
Speak Greek? Yeah, I figured, yeah. Do they speak more than Greek, or do they understand other dialects being exposed to them?
No.
Okay.
So we speak Greek, and I send my kids to Greek school too. They hate it, but it's a rite of passage. You got to do it.
I love that. And, you know, like, they hate it now, but that, you know, as they grow up, they're going to be grateful for that, because I feel like nowadays people need to remain really close to their culture. You know, I think there's like a lot of, you know, just kind of the outside, you know, influence of just like, you need to be like this, you need to be like that. It's like, no, be who you are, and your culture is really what grounds you. And, you know, so I think that's like a great thing, that you want your kids to be grounded in the Greek culture, because it's so much of who they are.
Absolutely. I think it's a lot about identity and knowing who you are, because the world will tell you a million different things about what's important and what's valuable and who you should be and what you should try to be like. But in our family, despite running around to a million different activities, and no, we don't have the family dinner the way I used to all the time, but I'm trying to keep as much of that, you know, connection amongst all of us, because we are in so many different directions. That's mom life. I mean, yeah. I'm in a car basically from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. every evening. Just which of my 3 kids is going where? It's intense.
Yeah, it sounds intense. All right, so you have 3 children. How old are they?
Yes. So I have 2 tweens. They are 12 and 11.
Okay.
And
Tweens?
1 6-year-old. Tweens, not twins.
Okay.
They are before teens. Tweens.
Tweens. Oh, I thought that was like a Greek word, saying Irish twins.
Well, they're 14 months apart,
Yeah,
so they're really close.
That's me and my sister. We're 14 months apart.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then my little one is 6. He's in
11,
kindergarten.
12, and 6. Okay.
Yes. So, I mean, it's full on. Anything else that I do beyond motherhood is not because some responsibility is taken off of me. I mean, I'm a stay-at-home mom, essentially, who also happens to work 20, 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
So it's a lot.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a lot. And I love that, like, you had this career in editing, and now you're the editor for the Moms Network, and you have the Momcast. And it's funny because I just did an episode with Dorothy, which is actually coming out, which already came out. Sorry. But regardless, a lot of the things that you're saying like resonate with the conversation that we had, and like pouring yourself into motherhood and finding a purpose in motherhood is so essential, because, you know, like it's people don't understand how much work it actually is. And I mean, I certainly don't. And what was it like, obviously, when you had your first child? Because that must have been a transformational. It sounds like such a cliche question. Obviously, there's a transformational moment for you, but it changes everything about the family. Talk a little bit about that.
Adam, you nailed it. It was transformational. That's it. When people say, "Oh, which new baby was the hardest transition? 1 to 2, 2 to 3?" No, it was 0 to 1. Nothing on this planet can prepare you for being a parent. And I was the last one of my friends to get married and to have kids. I had hung out with kids, saw everybody else doing it, knew so many moms, and could never have imagined what it was like. So the self-sacrifice, number one, and really putting everything else in your life on hold to become a mother. And I know some people might say, well, that was your fault. You did it wrong. You shouldn't have stopped working. You shouldn't have stopped doing whatever you did. But I don't regret a minute of it, because this is what I wanted to do. I was all over upstate New York following my dream, and I did it. I was in Binghamton. I was in Albany. I was getting to bigger markets. I was getting more responsibility. I was more visible. I finally made it to New York City. I was at one of the big 3 networks, and I hated it. And I think they hated me. I mean, it was not a happy thing to be in this place where I was grinding it out every day. And I was used to grinding. I mean, it was a dozen years that I had put into this career. And all I could think was, this is never going to love me back. This is never going to love me back. I'm watching everybody else live their life. When's my life going to start? And I'm a 30-year-old woman who had done everything she wanted to do. I was, you know, I had the support of my family. They showed up for me wherever I was moving. It was, okay, rent an apartment, get your furniture. They showed up with food. They helped me build the furniture. You know, I bought a condo. They helped me. You know, we scraped wallpaper off the wall. I mean, they showed up and physically helped me get my life on track wherever I was. And at the same time, I'm like, damn, when's my life going to start? The things that I wanted are exactly the things I have today. So I really have to stop in all of my chaos and say, well, shit, I'm that girl who got everything she ever wanted.
That's wild. Do you think that when you were in the broadcast and you made it to the city, you were almost chasing a dream that wasn't yours, or it made your dream more clear by getting to where you needed to be and realizing that, hey, this still isn't making me happy?
I think it was just putting into perspective that work is work. And there was a lot of fulfillment that I got from that. I was a go-to on my team. I was somebody they could trust. It was, I'm really good at this. I know how to tell a story. You know, I'd be on an assignment and have 8 hours out in the field, and I had to synthesize this down to a minute and 20 seconds and then go live and have good energy and show what's going on behind you and be that face. And I was good at it and I loved it. And I got so much fulfillment out of it. It was just about saying, okay, well, what's next?
Yeah.
You know, what's going to be the permanent thing for me? Because there is no permanence in television news. They can like you one day, they don't the next. You're covering a story you don't like today, a story you absolutely love tomorrow, and then it's back to talking about something that you just really don't care about.
Yeah.
So in the end, where's the meat of what's going to make you happy? And overnight, when I became a parent, it was like screeching halt. And, you know, my purpose, which was storytelling and being important to a team, completely ended. So overnight, it was like, wow. I spent all of this time building a career, and now I can't get out of my pajamas because I'm with a child all day and it's screaming at me and it won't eat what I'm feeding him. And it was really hard to be humbled in that way. That's what was the difference. It was, if I did something wrong in news, okay, no big deal. But if I did something what I considered wrong as a parent, it mattered. Yeah. It mattered. And I loved that responsibility. And I felt really just, God, this brought me to my knees.
Yeah. I mean, that's profound. And, you know, obviously along the way, you found a partner and your husband. And when did that happen?
I was 30 years old and I met my husband on a blind date in Manhattan.
Nice.
And
I love these stories.
It's great. It'll be, you know, my God, is it going to be 16 years in January? And that was it. It's one of those, you know, we had dinner for 6 hours and the rest is history. He made fun of me because I said, can we have dinner at 6 o'clock? And he's like, no, who has dinner at 6 o'clock? This is New York. You know, I nap until 10 and then I go out. And I said, listen, I get up at 3 a.m. to do the news. So I'm asleep by 8 p.m. Like, this is just my life. So I said on Saturday night, can we have dinner at 6? And he begrudgingly said yes. And then we ended up staying out till 2 a.m. anyway, just talking and talking and going to the next place. And that was it for us.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Blind date, you know, that's so cool.
That was, someone did a mitzvah for me. Someone I grew up with introduced us. And that's my goal in life. I have to do that for someone else.
Nice. That's so cool. And then how did you end up in Greenwich?
Great question. So we're in Manhattan with a baby and a second is on the way. And I mean, I can't be here. I got to get out of here. So where are we going? And he said, let's try Greenwich. You know, we have no connection there. And
is he from the city?
He's from Long Island.
He's from Long Island, okay.
And I'm from Massachusetts. So we said, you know, we're looking for a suburb. And I didn't know that Greenwich existed. I didn't know it was, I said, Connecticut, can we just go to Boston if we're going to be in Connecticut? He said, no, it's a suburb of New York. We can try this. So we came and had dinner on Greenwich Ave one night and thought, this is a cool place. Let's give it a try. So we moved here and baby number 2 came, and then, you know, years and years later, number 3 was on the way and we were like, okay, we have to move again because we just need some more space. So we got some more space and, I was used to moving. For me, I moved 5 times for work. So I know what it is to start again and build a community for yourself and find purpose, because building those relationships and making someone feel comfortable in a new place became so much more important, because I was doing it for 5 people at one point. So it was, got to find schools, have to find activities. You have to find a place where you're going to be happy. Where am I going to go to the gym? Where am I going to buy my groceries? Where am I going to send my kids? Like, it's all just very, it seems small, but it's all very consequential, because everyone has to feel happy. And that was my purpose as a mom.
Yeah.
So it sounds like small potatoes if you don't have to do it, but there was an enormous role that I played in just making all of us feel good.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's awesome that you're good at that, because a lot of people aren't good at relocating and resettling. Having had that experience moving so often during your career, is that something you would want for your children?
I love the idea of change, even though it's really scary, because you can become whoever you want to be. You get to decide, who do I want to be in this community? What role am I going to play? And I think that's part of what I think is so powerful about public speaking and, creating persona. I love helping people create persona, because no one gets to put you in a box. You get to decide. So Adam, who do you want to be? That spearheading that process of creating a place of comfort and belonging and finding purpose. I help other people find their purpose. And that's what's so rewarding, because there's no one who can say, yeah, you can't do that. No, really, I can.
Yeah.
I can shake the hands, and I can get out there and meet people, and I have agency over my life. There is no one that's going to tell me I can't accomplish something, because it's within my control. So that's what creating persona is. And that's why public speaking is so powerful. Why would you ever stay silent when you have the ability to speak and give your opinion and change minds and create this idea that you're a leader within your community? So whether it's me finding, a place of comfort in a new place, okay, well, what do I have to do? I'm going to get out there. I'm not going to sit home on my phone. And thank God that wasn't an option for me. Those early years, I'm dating myself, but that's just not how it was. We didn't connect over a phone.
Yeah.
It was get out there, go somewhere, talk to strangers, take a chance, and see where it leads you. Just say yes to a lot of experiences. If you're a person who says, I don't know who's going to be there, and I don't know anybody, but all right, I'm willing to be uncomfortable. I'll go be the one sitting in a corner. I'll strike up a conversation with a stranger. I'll bump into someone and say, hi, how are you? And shake their hand and begin a conversation. Those things are so scary.
So scary sometimes.
But I did it over and over and over again.
Well, I love what you said about, I embrace the change, because one of the things I always say is, like, wherever you go, there you are. And, I think it takes like a very profound acceptance of self to be able to jump into these different spaces that are foreign to you and just say, like, I'm going to control the narrative here on who I am, what I represent, and how I think and what I do. Because a lot of people are afraid, because they go into these new spaces and they become a chameleon and just want to blend in, as opposed to just be them. And, more often than not, that works against you, because you amass this identity that you just put on without even realizing. And now you kind of have to play this role, and you grow further and further apart from who you actually are.
That's so interesting that you say that, because there are 2 avenues to that. One of them is, yes, you lose yourself trying to fit in with so many people that, who am I? Where's my core? I've changed so many times that I don't really recognize the person I was when I started. And at the same time, part of persona is literally putting on that disguise and saying, I'm tired. I'm not in the mood. I'm not feeling confident right now, but I'm going to act it.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful, to be able to say, you know what? I'm going to go to that restaurant and have dinner by myself, even though I feel so uncomfortable because I want that nice meal. I don't know who I'm going to run into. Maybe someone will strike up a conversation with me. Maybe I'll strike it up with them, and who knows where that's going to go. So part of it is just being able to say, I'm not the most confident person in the world, but can I fake it for an hour at this event?
Yeah.
Let's go network. Let's go be that person who is the random girl or the random dude starting up conversation. There is so much power in putting yourself somewhere uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And it's so funny that, you know, one of the things you said is I barely recognize who I was 15 years ago, but that's growth. You know, I think it's adjustment, but it's also growth, because would you agree to that?
Huge growth.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of myself. I had no idea who I could be as a mother. And mom it's like, oh yeah, she's a mom. She has 3 kids. Let's put her in that little box. No, the people who knew me 5 years ago don't even know the person I am today. I'm so different. And that's why I look at people who I grew up with and I say, oh, they're that person, you know? And if I see them now, whether it's on social media or on LinkedIn or on something else, and I'll say, good for them. I'm going to say hi.
Yeah.
You know, part of me for a while just wanted to distance myself from who I was when I was younger, and I'm making my way in a different world and things are different, and where are they and where am I? And now it's just total joy.
Yeah.
You know, saying, look at what we did. Mm-hmm. And my path is not linear. It's up and down. It's like, you know, you see those graphs that show starting point and end point, and it's like dips and turns and swirls and circles and failure, and you're up again, you're down again. And it's like, yeah, that's life. And look, we're here, we're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that, like, you know, there was a point where, you wanted to distance yourself from who you were. And what was the motivating factor behind that? And, you know, like, was there a moment in your life where you were just faced with an overwhelming obstacle that when you came out on the other side was like just life altering and what you might mark as a turning point?
I think there are a lot of different thoughts there. First, it was never that I wanted to necessarily distance myself from my childhood, but I had this, you know, core thought that nothing changes if nothing changes. Mm-hmm. So let me go out and try something that a lot of people haven't done. And it's not out of judgment for the people who I grew up with, like, oh, look, they're still where we grew up. Good for you. You found your life there. That's awesome. Yeah. I needed to go a million different places and to try a million different things to find my life the way I wanted it. So taking those risks was just, well, yeah, if I'm not 100% happy where I am, keep going, keep trying. You know, there was this clawing effect that I had throughout my career because I wanted better and I was always looking at the next thing. Not because I wasn't happy, but there were goals there. There was ambition there. So it was just constantly moving, constantly trying and sacrificing. I mean, a lot of things that, you know, my friends were getting married. I missed a lot of bridal showers, a lot of baby showers, you know, a lot of, and, you know, formative things in your 20s. My God, I worked my 20s away and everybody else was having fun. Again, the nights and weekends, it was just a lot that I felt I was investing. And you could call it a sacrifice, but I really thought I was investing in myself, and it always paid off. So that gave me a lot of, I think, stamina to just keep going.
Yeah.
And as far as any events that really changed me, you know, motherhood was it because you don't really know what you're made of. It's like that tea bag that goes into hot water and you become something else. An Eleanor Roosevelt quote that I'm going to absolutely butcher, but that's the idea. You don't know a woman's strength until she's in hot water. Mm. And I did have an IVF journey with number 3, which is somewhere I never thought that I would be. And that takes, I think, for me, a lot of tuning out everybody else. I didn't tell anybody about that journey. I didn't talk about it with anybody except my husband. And it was really just saying to myself, if I have a goal, I don't want anyone's opinion about it. I don't want them to sway me. I don't want them to say, really? Are you sure? it's going to be really hard. Really? Are you sure? But you already have 2 kids. Aren't you fine? Like, you know, you have a boy, you have a girl, you have a perfect family. And I thought, don't negate my dreams.
Yeah, like, no, this is what I want.
This is what I want.
Yeah.
And I really didn't have the emotional strength to deal with anybody else's feelings about it but mine. I'm not going to convince you that this is okay. And to be honest, I don't really want you asking me about it, because there were days where I sat there and said, this isn't going to happen for me. And I couldn't deal with anybody else's emotions or opinions. And I just wanted to move toward my goal.
You know, I love that. And, you know, like this past year, obviously I worked with this foundation, the Rodon Foundation, where they were providing IVF grants for couples on their fertility journey. And I was able to speak to a lot of couples about it. And, you know, that's a very cool perspective. One that I think is more common than not. But I think the mindset that you addressed going into it is super admirable, because I think people do that in a lot of things when they're making emotional decisions, or when they're reach a crossroads and they ask everybody their opinions. And sometimes that's not the best thing to do, because it drives you off your path, where you start to question your own motives. You start to question what you want. You start to question what's going to make you happy, when really the people you should be conferring to are the people who are also invested in it, like you said with your husband, and the people who have been through it before. You know, if anything, you know, I'm talking about with whether it's a professional thing or a family thing, or, you know, I resort to people who have gone through the same thing. And one metaphor that recently came to my attention, which I love, is if you're walking through a minefield, you step in the footprints.
Sure.
You know, and I think that's such a beautiful image, where it's like, you know, if I'm going to be charting territory that I don't know, or that could be potentially dangerous or harmful or challenging, you know, let's follow the footprints that were able to navigate it prior to me. And, you know, like, I feel like that's something that you did, in a sense where, like, you kept it close knit and you muted the outside noise, and that's what got you through. And I think that's actually super brave, frankly.
Listen, there was also fear of judgment, so it was a protective mechanism as well.
Yeah.
But I think I'm someone who has always had a very small circle of confidants. I'm not someone who has 10 friends from high school and 10 friends from college and 10 friends from my news days. I was never that girl.
Yeah.
And my daughter asked me the other day, how many bridesmaids did you have? And I said, oh, that's so interesting. I didn't have any.
Really?
And she said, what do you mean?
Really?
Really? And I said, well, my sister was my matron of honor. She's my sister. She's my best friend. And the woman who introduced us was in Greek, we have a kumbara or a kumbaro. They exchange your wedding crowns during the wedding ceremony. Aww. So they have this very special role, and often they will baptize your first child, which our kumbari did. But I said I had my sister next to me, and I had this very important person who changed the course of my life next to me. And that was enough.
Did he just have like his brother or best man? That's it?
He did, and he's the one who had a million friends. And I said, okay, well, I want nobody with me. And he said, I have all of these friends. So rather than him picking, it was just easy, too, to have a best man. And, you know, I said, first of all, I'm practical to a fault. I know myself. I was living in Manhattan, planning a wedding in Worcester. I hadn't lived there in so many years, so I'm going back and forth trying to figure this out. I said, wait, you want me to worry about someone's hair and makeup and shoes and dress and jewelry? I have to figure that out for myself. I don't want to do this for 5 or 6 other women. So and I also said, you don't want to spend $1,000 on a dress and hair and shoes that I picked for you. Wear your favorite dress.
Yeah.
Go pick out exactly where you're going to feel comfortable in. I want my girls to be there and celebrate and have a good time. And they did come hang out with me the day of my wedding. But I will never forget. The hairdresser showed up to do my hair and he said, it's so quiet. I thought I was in the wrong place. I'm like, no. This is us. We're
just
here.
me and her.
I was totally zen.
That's so
I had
cool.
a beautiful morning. And of course, my big fat Greek family is showing up and people are arriving at our house. And it ended up being a huge party and chaos and awesome. And I was calm. And that is so indicative. Is that weird that I didn't have bridesmaids?
No, I mean, no, but I think it's also like super respectful of your sister because, my girlfriend's
Yeah,
her.
Lena, are you listening?
Yeah, I hope she is. It's super respectful. You have a great sister. My girlfriend's a maid of honor at her sister's, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and obviously it's a blessing. And God bless her sister, and her fiance. They're both amazing, but it's a lot of work. And I've been a part of weddings and watched some massive rollouts, and I'm like, this is about love of two people, right?
I just wasn't into it.
Yeah.
I felt like it was more for me to coordinate. It was so easy.
That's so cool.
Everybody showed up the way they wanted to. All of them were happy. And I don't know. I didn't do it to be rebellious. It was honestly just, it felt really authentic to me. And I was happier for it.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, now I feel badass.
Yeah, that's so badass. That's so cool. That's refreshing. So I want to jump into a little bit about the public speaking because I think that's something that a lot of people are trying to navigate nowadays. And talk to me about your public speaking journey. What motivates you to help others on their journeys, and maybe some advice you'd give to speakers and aspiring speakers.
I got involved in public speaking because I gave a speech in high school, and it was at my church, of course, and everybody was quiet and I was talking. And I thought,
when you were talking,
this is cool. Yeah. That's what a speech is. Somebody's up at a microphone, but I don't know, something clicked for me in that experience. And I thought, I'm talking and they're listening. This is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And I, of course, was nervous. I'm nervous sitting here with you. Nervousness is not something that you don't have to deal with ever.
I'm nervous
Your goal
too,
is not to eradicate nerves. It's about, okay, well, can I function with them? So of course I was nervous and I thought, this is pretty cool. Maybe because I was a middle child who just was trying to find my place in the world and somebody listened to me, who knows? But I think that I found the core of what public speaking is, and that is power. And when I teach people about public speaking who say, no, I hate the microphone. I don't want to go up there. I will do anything. Just don't put me in a place where all the eyes are on me. And I say, well, then you're totally forfeiting so much influence, so much power, so much opinion, and so much validation that what you have to say is important. And I think that's part of what people are missing. It's this, well, what do I have to say? Why is what I have to say important?
Like the little old me kind of mentality, like who's really going to care about what I say? Yeah,
this thing that we call imposter syndrome, which I have a lot of philosophies about why that's not even true, that I stole from other people. I can tell you about it. But I think that we just need to believe that what we have to say is worth hearing. So there's a self-esteem issue at the core of it. Number two is just practical. I mean, if think of, my kids are doing a group project at school. And I always say, make sure you're part of the people presenting. Some people do, everybody has a different personality type. You might be the person who quietly works in the background. That's fine. You might be the one who did a lot of the work and isn't taking a lot of credit. Some people don't do much work and take credit. They're all different, types of people when we're talking about a group dynamic. But I say, always make sure you're talking. The person talking is the one who is perceived to be the most intelligent, the most knowledgeable about this project, and the one who has some sense of leadership in the group. Yeah. Make sure you're the one doing that.
I think that's so important, especially when you take that from a classroom setting to a boardroom. Or you take that to
1,000%.
A stage. At the end of the day, like we're all public speaking, it's all about how you communicate a message and streamline it for your audience so that it can have maximum impact. What do you say to someone who says, you know what? Let me rephrase. how do you get people to overcome the shame they may attribute to their story where they feel like it has no value?
Wow, that's a powerful question. And sometimes the answer is just practice. Even if you're talking with your friends in a circle at a kitchen table, you're public speaking. The perception that public speaking is something out there, that you need a microphone, that you need a stage, that you need a huge audience. I think that's the most limiting belief that people can have about public speaking, because you don't need any of those things. You just need one human being with their eyes locked on yours, and you can create change for that person. You can inspire them. You can open up to them and feel a sense of trust when you're sharing your story. If someone has shame and they want to talk about that story, you have to know that every other person has their vulnerable space too. Everyone has a trigger that makes them feel less than. So whatever you feel shameful about, you might wear that on your sleeve. But everybody else out in the audience, they have one too. You just might not know what it is. So your ability to push that button and connect with someone in the audience, you might never know.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to take the chance.
I totally relate to that. I mean, like, I talk about the first time I ever publicly spoke a lot because that was how I felt. You know, I had a lot of shame about parts of my past, and there was a lot of grief also and loss that I felt would isolate me and push the audience away because it was somewhat dark or painful. And when I was able to start talking about these stories and talking about the past and talking about obstacles that I've been through, more often than not, people reached out to me or hit me up in my DMs or sent me an email, or if it was in an event, walked up to me and was like, that was super powerful. I want to continue this relationship. And it has really opened up a plethora of new connections and new relationships that I wouldn't have had if I didn't just bite the bullet and say, hey, I'm just going to leave it out on the floor, and hopefully it reaches the person I need it to reach. Because I also understand that, you know, when you're speaking in front of a large group, you're not going to reach everyone the same way. And some people you may not even reach at all. And you need to accept that. You know, we can't make everyone happy. What is your thoughts there? Like when it comes to like truly connecting with as many people as possible, and what messages do you think are like the best to lead with? If
I don't think your goal is ever to reach every person in an audience.
Yeah.
We speak for many different reasons. Sometimes we get up to entertain. Sometimes we get up to share a message. Sometimes we're just going around in a circle at an icebreaker in work, and it's like, oh, I don't even want to say my name and my favorite color. You know, people just don't want even the 20 seconds of attention on them. But I think in the moment where you're receiving from people their response to what you get, you also have to be open to that. You know, taking a compliment is hard sometimes. How did you feel the first time someone came up to you and said, wow, that was powerful?
I felt amazing. Like, because it was the first time I was willing to be super vulnerable and not like superficially vulnerable and telling people what they wanted to hear. And what I mean by superficially vulnerable is, you know, I've been in therapy for years on and off. And, you know, in the early swings of therapy, I was telling a therapist what I wanted to hear, that they wanted to hear, and doing the act. But here I was in front of an audience speaking from my heart to the point where, you know, you could see the emotion in my face. I think there were tears in my eyes. And that's what was the authenticity of the message, I think, plays a tremendous role in reaching your audience. Because the thing is, I feel like a lot of keynote speakers nowadays, you know, they have their pocket keynote that they go up and they present and they do it. And sure, they do it with the same passion. But then, you know, once you dig in and you research them, like if you put together like 6 of their reels, you got their entire speech, you know. And, you know, that's what I think is so like frustrating, especially in the personal development space, which I'm very immersed in, where my message has to adjust with my growth. I can't be saying the same speech for 3 years, because then what kind of progress did I make in my personal journey? And that's where...
And it also has to change according to the audience whom you're speaking to.
Yeah.
Because speaking is mission-based. It's, what do I want to say? What do I have to say? What might these people have never heard before?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is always, they have never heard it because they've never met you. And I think understanding that your individual story is the most powerful thing you will ever tell, ever, is the self-esteem and the confidence that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering, what do I have to say? Your uniqueness is the answer. And I think it makes a difference. For example, I've worked with a lot of female founders, just helping them, you know, whether it's write bios for their websites or talk about their products or get out there on social media and try to, you know, sell and be who they are. The key is always, who am I? What is my story? Because there's no one else like me out there. I don't care how many people sell XYZ product. The product isn't what's going to sell. It's you that's going to sell it. And it's you that has to feel confident going in any situation and saying, you just don't know me. You've never heard me before. And to the people who, again, to the people who think that, oh, I know her, that's her story. Oh, Adam, I've heard him speak before. I get who he is. He's the guy that this and that. No, you don't know me. And I think every time you get up to talk, there's an opportunity to share who you have become, just like you're saying.
Yeah.
You've evolved, your story's going to evolve. But you need to know that there's so much power in that. I'm not going to let anybody, why would I let somebody assume who I am? You're going to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Why would I let anybody pigeonhole me into, yeah, that's who that guy is? Have you talked to me in the last 6 months? There is an evolution that's happened. Go out there and grab people by the shoulders and shake them and say, this is what you have to know. I have something powerful to share with you, and I'm going to make you hear it.
I love that. And I love that because you are just summarizing what strong communication is. And I think that's so important because words do matter, and the way you communicate them, especially on a professional level. You talked about how sales, if you can't communicate who you are and what's your why, I feel like you're so far away from getting another client, because you're right. They buy into the persona. They buy into their faith in you as a presenter of the product that you're selling. I want to actually talk about how communication plays a role in being a mom. You know, like when you're communicating to your children and the communicating skills that you try to instill with your children. And the reason I want to talk about this, because I feel like I see a lot of parents not speaking to their children in a way that my parents did. And
Ooh, tell me more. What does that mean?
well, you know, like I'm 38. All right. So like we used to sit at a table and talk. You know, whether we were at home or whether we were in a restaurant, we were expected to sit at the table and talk. Yeah, sometimes we got the crayons. We never got an iPad.
Right.
Mom was never on her phone. Dad was never on his phone. And obviously the technology, boom, you know, you can attribute to some of that. But at the end of the day, those were some of the most important conversations that we had as a family. And yeah, some of them times they got contentious. Yeah, sometimes it wasn't what you wanted to hear. Someone got pissed off, whatever. But that's profound memories of my childhood. And I think that one of the things you had mentioned earlier is, you know, how, you know, these were some traditions that I had growing up, and I want to present that to my children in a way for them also, so they also have some semblance of this same tradition as well. Right. You know, that is a profound tradition in my family, just communicating around a dinner table and talking to my parents. Don't get me wrong. The space wasn't how it is now, where we really talked deeply about how we felt.
Right.
You know, we didn't really talk about feelings. My dad wasn't that type of guy. He was to a certain extent, but like but my mom, it just wasn't like that. We were old school, you know?
Well, there are two things that you're saying, right? One of them is preserving what we loved from our childhood.
Yes.
And the other is about breaking cycles. And I think whether it's not just moms, it's dads, it's people who are mentors to younger people. So, you know, generically, let's call it parenting. There's this dichotomy of like, wow, you know, I want to preserve the ability to have family mean something and that we have each other's backs and that there's this sense of loyalty and this sense of you're, you know, bolstered and supported by the people around you. And on the other hand, I better not handle things the way my parents did because this is a harder life and my kids need to know they can come to me to talk about anything or they're going to be a lost cause.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cycle breaking happening. And I think communication comes into play, you know, in the mom space. Why is the Local Moms Network so important? Because we are here to commiserate. So number one, people who are going through something need to scaffold one another. You know, we're propping up other parents. So I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom, if you're a working mom, we're on the same team here. We're all trying to do the same thing. Why are we pitting ourselves against one another? Parents need to band together and say, this is a big, scary world. There are things that we don't understand happening to influence our children.
Yeah.
We need to be on the same team. So I think that is the premise of why I'm involved with the Local Moms Network. We need to be a community that feels like I see you, I support you, and if you have something that I need to know, tell me, please. You have that hack for getting your kid to sleep? You have an easy recipe that I can get on the table in 20 minutes? Those aren't silly things. That's survival. That's why we need community. So that's why I feel so emboldened and strengthened to do what I do every day in the mom space. That is my world. So from the getting the food on the table to how do I talk about sex with my children? Like, what? I didn't have that conversation with my parents.
Me neither.
So communication has to be calm. It has to be honest. It has to come from a place where I cannot be embarrassed to talk about things that I am freaking out about inside. And I can't believe we're having this conversation, but here we are. And I better be talking with some authority. There also has to be an openness where it's like, okay, you heard that word in school. Thank you for coming to me and saying, hey, by the way, I heard this. Like, you don't have to do that. How do I know what you're hearing? So that to me is the most validating thing that I will ever hear from my kids. Hey, by the way, you know,
what does this mean?
What does this mean? I heard this word. Because you're hearing half-truths, something that somebody Googled, something that somebody heard from an older sibling, or just not my version of it. So the communication is so important because I need to prepare. I mean, preparation is the key to any public speaking success. Even if that is telling my own story. How do I tell it without blabbering on and on? So I need to do some preparation to think about, okay, what are my key points here? I also need to say to myself, my kid's gonna come to me asking about this. And when they do, I'm gonna have my freak out moment and I can say, I don't have to be the person who has all the answers right away. This is exactly what you wanna hear the way that I planned it out. You know what? I'm gonna need 5 minutes. Let me get back to you. Or let me sleep on that. And tomorrow at breakfast, we're gonna have a conversation.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, I don't have all the answers right now. Just like any adult, you know, if our boss comes to you, you know, your boss comes to you and says, this is what you need to do. Or explain this to me, or why did this happen? Okay, one moment. I'm just going to, you know, gather what I need to. I'll be right in and we'll discuss it. It's okay to ask for a minute. We're humans.
Yeah.
So take a hot second and figure it out. So cycle breaking is a big part of communication because if you didn't have that communication somewhere along the line in your life, be the person who does that for someone else. Or give someone permission to say, here it is. It might not be completely right, but here's what I think is true.
Well, I think also kids have so much more access to information than I did now. And so you probably get that a lot when they probably hear a lot that they come up to you and they say something like that because,
Sure.
You know, the amount of information that they're exposed to just obviously through technology and everything. It's astronomical in comparison to what I was growing up, and especially, which is why I kind of going to go back to like the whole iPads at the table thing. I don't know why that bothers me so much. But then I also understand the opposite side is if I don't prepare my kids to be technologically acclimated, then they're going to be way behind as they are going to actually need to learn and need to use the tech.
I didn't answer your question, so I'm glad you circled back.
Yeah.
The iPad at the table is number one, a parent needing just a damn minute.
Okay.
So I'm a lot less judgmental than I used to be in motherhood 12 years later. And I try to just understand where that's coming from. I think the difference is that when there needs to be just general manners, general functioning in a society, at a table, how do I sit? How do I talk? Yes, those are things that I think parents need to teach their kids. I do try to say, what are your peaks and pits today? That's our conversation at dinner, your peak and your pit, the best thing and the worst thing. And to take from Sarah Blakely, whose father asked her the same question, what did you fail at today? Because, we parents have 9,000 things that we're trying to do, validate your kid and make them feel good, but don't tell them too much that you're proud. Make sure that they eat super nutritious things and that everything is really healthy, but then, don't kill yourself in a kitchen. You're supposed to be sitting down and enjoying them and being part of their conversation. And, there are a million different things tugging at parents in our brains. I do think that conversation, public speaking, we can call it, it's just talking. It's a skill that begins when they're younger.
Yeah.
Okay, stand up, hold your poster up from school. Tell us about what it is and what did you make? Asking our kids questions, even if it's in the car. So I know that a lot of the dinner table conversations aren't happening, but in defense of parents, we're driving a lot. Some of my best conversations with kids are when they can't see my face. And somehow it's sort of like being behind a screen, when people comment things and you say, how could you possibly say that? You would never say that to someone's face. But the anonymity or the space allows people to be more bold. Kids are sort of the same way. So if I'm driving and they're in the back seat, sometimes I'm just listening to conversations, but I don't do a ton of carpooling. My kids will say more while we're driving. They'll talk to each other. Oh yeah, I heard that too, or whatever it is. They play off of one another and they will say things and ask things that I don't know that they would say or ask to my face, which is actually quite refreshing that in this moment where you sort of feel disconnected and you're just going through like the grind of the day, important conversations are happening.
Yeah.
And so a couple more things. When my kids are sitting there explaining something and I'll say, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Stop. Think of your thought, and then start again. And they'll get so frustrated with me sometimes, and other times, literally, my son will say, hold on, that's not coming out right. Let me just stop for a second. And then he'll start his story again. And I'm like, yes, you're getting it. Something is sinking in. Like, you have to be able to synthesize your thoughts. So I am flash forwarding 20 years to somebody who can't tell me a story. And I'm like, dude, you have to be able to just explain to me what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
That starts when they're little. So I try to say, tell me about your day in one sentence.
Oh, I don't even know if I could do that.
Well, you're going to try. You're going to practice.
Okay.
But those are all public speaking skills. Like I said, I used to tell my 8-hour day in 1 minute and 20 seconds. You do have to be able to pick and choose important things. That's like the basis of public speaking. You have a lot of thoughts. Can we organize them? Can we talk in steps? Can you tell me your day in one sentence? Then let's go into more details. It's the upside down pizza, right? You want to start with the broad crust first. And then you want to go to the next detail.
Love that.
And the next. So this is not chronological speaking. With my 6-year-old, it's like, okay, first this, then that, then that. But that's not what it is. When you're an adult, it's, Adam, you're not going to believe it. There was this massive accident on Greenwich Ave. It shut down the entire street for 7 hours. That's one sentence that told me the entire thing. You didn't say, and first there was this, and then that car backed into that car, and then this. It's like, how are you storytelling? You tell people the headline first, and then you tell them the more detailed information as you go. That's a complicated concept that can start for younger kids.
And I love that.
Is, tell me your day in a sentence.
I love that because I was literally just talking to the social media guy and he was like, at the end of the day, you need to get your hook within the first 3 seconds. Sure. And that comes down to just in-person communication as well, which I get that because I have a attention span that real time where if I'm not drawn in right away, I have so many different thoughts in my head. And it's taken a lot of work to really be able to focus and engage in these type of meaningful conversations for me, because I was never like this where I could sit down and really internalize the message that you're saying. For me, it was always you talk, and after a certain period of time, I go blank, and I'm thinking about what traffic's going to be like when I get home. I'm thinking about, did I do my laundry? I'm thinking about, do I have to go to the grocery store? I'm thinking about, did I respond to that email? And all these thoughts. So to sit down and have a conversation, it took a lot of training for me to do, to be able to just lock in, look somebody in the eye. And that's why I always make eye contact now, because that's really what focuses me now. Because if I'm looking them in their eye, like it's like a mental thing that I train myself. But otherwise, it's very much like, I can lose interest. So when you're talking about putting the headline in the beginning in just the way you communicate real time, that's awesome. And I think more people should do that when they talk to me. I'm just kidding.
Listen, Adam, what you do here is epically hard. Yeah. Podcasting is totally different than anything else. Interviewing is hard because you're listening and thinking at the same time. As an interviewer, you're thinking about the next question because we don't want dead air. We don't want silence. But at the same time, wait a minute, you might have said something really interesting. I need to dig into that.
Yeah.
So I need to be thinking ahead and then thinking in the moment as well. This is really hard.
It's so funny because it's talking to a fellow podcaster and you can relate to it. And I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm a person who likes having good conversations with people. Why do you hate talking to some people? Or you're like, oh my gosh, that person, hurry up, leave, say you're busy, pull out your phone, do something, distract so that you don't get caught up with someone. But that's what we're trying to do to someone who's not a great public speaker. You need to give space to the other person to react to what you're saying, yet be prepared, yet be able to react to you as well. So there's so many dynamics happening at the same time.
Yeah. I love it.
Having a conversation is harder than it seems.
It really is, especially if you want to have a conversation that isn't surface level and that you get value out of, I
mean, let's dig in. Why BS about, my biography is not that exciting.
Yeah.
The resume is not exciting.
I thought it's pretty cool.
But what's underneath that? Like, what are the struggles? That's what you're asking me about.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here nervous as hell because, again, nerves are not bad. Nerves mean you're excited. Like, your goal is to get to homeostasis as soon as possible. How do I get to cruising altitude? You're a plane taking off. You are nervous. You should be. So this is the critical part of the flight here. We need to take off. Okay, well, how soon can you stop sweating and freaking out and just relax into the conversation? That's the goal. So the goal is to never be nervous. No, of course you're going to be nervous. The goal is, how can I get to feeling normal or comfortable enough that I can listen and think ahead and do all of the things?
How are you feeling now, though?
Super relaxed.
I love that. I love that.
It's because of you.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. No, well, it's because of this conversation. And that's amazing. And I knew we'd have a great conversation. And I think you just packed so much value into just folks who are listening and who have a message that they want to get out and have a story that they want to get out. And you've just provided them with so much valuable insight into just stripping those fears away, because I do think a lot of it is fear-based. And, I always associate fear before I used to let fear be a North Star for me. So, all right, I'm very turn. Now, fear, I kind of look at it as just like nerves, like you just said. It's there, but I can still do it in spite of fear. And then once I do it, every single time I have a new guest And every single time I even have like a meeting that I know is high stakes, there's always nerves in front of them. I feel like it's just
because you care.
It's because like, exactly, you know, and that's the thing. I think people think that, oh, like I'm only going to do the things that fear isn't attached to. And I kind of feel bad for people who live that way, because
you're never taking a risk.
You're not challenging yourself. It's kind
of boring in the comfort zone.
Yeah. It's super boring in the comfort zone.
And I think, you know, I don't know who said this originally, but it's a thought that I see all the time everywhere, and I so believe it. They're going to judge you anyway. People are going to have an opinion about Adam no matter what. The haters are going to hate. The people who love you might say, you know what? I don't care what you do, Adam, I'm supporting you. And then everybody else is somewhere in the middle. But everyone's going to have an opinion, so just go be you. Who cares?
Mm-hmm. You're like the perfect person to run the Momcast, frankly. Now that I've gotten to know you, it's like such a perfect fit, because you talk about the way you talk about just communication, the way you talk about parenting is just such a refreshing, vibrant view. And you actually almost remove the fear out of just like, you make it sound fun when, you know, it can be stressful and there can be fears attached and there can be, you know, questioning whether you made the right decision that can haunt you. But like you make it sound like a beautiful journey. And I don't know if that's the mission that you had with the Momcast, but one thing that I've been wondering is what has been the most rewarding thing that you received in motherhood, or something that you learned about yourself that you never thought that you would learn?
It's exactly what your podcast is about. It's purpose. Because motherhood is the one place where I am irreplaceable. Those kids need me, period. I am their North Star. I am their safe place. I am the one whom they share everything good and bad with. So it might be my 6-year-old who comes home after holding it together all day. And, you know, this is what you learn. This is why I do Momcast, because I wouldn't know this unless somebody told me. Let your kids go nuts on you when they get home. They've been holding it together all day. Mm-hmm. You are their safe place where they can absolutely just decompress, fall apart. And yes, you're their doormat. And that's not a bad thing when you figure that, you know, everybody else in their life isn't going to give it to them straight. They have no place to dump all of their fears and their annoyances and everything else. Just be that place for them. Be steady. Be constant. I'm not going to find that anywhere else. Yeah. I'm not going to find that at any job. That's ridiculous. So do I feel bad that I gave up my career? Yeah, I lost myself in motherhood. I did. And there were low moments, and maybe I should have done that other half of me sooner. Yeah, I should have. That's not a regret. That's just me learning. So I know to appreciate this work that makes me crazy, or these deadlines that I have, because I wanted that. I look forward to that. But for me, motherhood is purpose. And I'm not special. There are billions of mothers in the world. We're not rare. But it doesn't make it any easier. That's the thing that I hold on to every day. I don't care how many mothers there are in the world. I'm still the best goddamn one. Because I'm doing it for my kids. They need me. So there's the most whole and loving relationship that I have with myself, because I know that's what I do.
I love that. And honestly, on that note, I really think it's a beautiful time to just kind of ask you one rapid fire question.
Sure.
It started as 3 when I first did this podcast, but
I'm so nervous.
I've done it down to 1, but it's a question that I ask every single guest is, what advice would you give to someone who's on the journey of finding purpose?
Don't knock the little things. Your purpose doesn't have to be something that's astronomical and affects everybody and changes the world. You don't need to change the world. Your purpose is to change maybe just yourself, maybe just one other human being. Stop looking for this monster task that other people need to respect. Make change and make purpose where you see necessary. That can be in the stranger sitting in a coffee shop who you sit next to. That can be in the elderly person who just needs a little bit of company. It can be in saying, forget everything fun that I'm doing. I am working on me for the next 6 months. No one's going to know who I am. I'm going into a dark hole where I work on myself physically, mentally, and emotionally. I am coming out the other side 10 times better than I am today. But your purpose doesn't have to mean anything to anybody else but you.
I love that answer. I love that answer. That was beautiful.
That's what you do. You've done for yourself. You have found purpose in yourself, and you have changed who you are, and you're evolving. And that's good enough. So that's why you need to share your story.
Demetra Ganias, I appreciate you. Please tell my audience how they can reach you. Talk about the Momcast, and super grateful.
I'm on Instagram at Demetra, last name Ganias, Ganias, the Local Moms Network. And the podcast is Momcast on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you listen to your shows.
Beautiful. Demetra Ganias, God bless. I'm really grateful for this conversation and our friendship. Thank you.